switch glasses because, you know, I refuse to get progressives. So we just get 2 different kinds of glasses and call it a day.
No one will know.
Girl. When thinking about presenting on the gospel according to marriage, it gets sensitive, right? Because it's not just about like my story. It involves like another person. And a theme that I've had since kind of saying yes to Dave when we got married was, and so many times when I would be praying like, Lord, is this the right decision? And should we do this? Or even when we were married, I felt like he always drove me to verses that talked about just loving one another. And I felt like that just seemed so like fluffy and so like Christian, like, of course you love everyone. But I feel like that word love and love one another has just in the 17 years kind of has taken on like, I'm like, oh, this is love. Oh, this kind of love for each other, and not just this like, I love you, you know? So I was just gonna give couple of things that, of course, I kind of wrote down a whole bunch of things, and I felt like this morning I woke up and God's like, but I want you to maybe talk on this, and I'm like, but I don't have notes on that. And so forgive me in advance if I sound a little tangential. But there was a couple of key takeaways that I hope that I can address. This is the blue was earlier and the purple is this morning. But kind of what I wanted to kind of talk through is of this idea of our marriages before children, before motherhood, and our marriages after. And for me, they've been vastly different. And so some of the things that have come out of the before and the after, how to manage expectations, communication, the importance of it. I called Dave this morning and I was like, because of course I asked permission. I'm like, hey, are you okay if I talk about our marriage a little bit? And of course I'm not going to go into like deep detail just because it's out there on the internet. But I asked him, I was like, if there was something that you could say in terms of that could be a nugget of wisdom or something that you've taken away as important to you over the last 17 years, what would it be? And he's like, managing expectations, communication and the importance of it. For him, it's like maintaining a couple time, and making sure that you stay connected. And then the other one is the trap and the danger of comparison and comparing. And so hopefully kind of as I share my story, we'll touch on like where some of these things even came from. So I'm gonna go back to the blue pen, which is what I wrote earlier. Just a little bit about who I am. I'm the youngest of 4 children. I grew up on Martha's Vineyard. I grew up in an awesome, an amazing family that had brokenness for sure. The youngest of 4. I had amazing role models for Christian marriage. I was able to witness like a true partnership between a man and a woman. My dad being like the head of our family, but welcoming and like honoring my mother in ways that it wasn't like he's like the head and my mom doesn't matter, but like because he respected my mom so much, like they just did things just super well. So I had that. I was able to like, my dad was like Mr. Fun. He was like the dad that like would come home and just like pick us up from the yard and like take us on an adventure. This is before cell phones, so like my mom would usually start freaking out because he's like, the kids were in the yard and now they're not home. And he didn't even think to go in and tell my mom that he was taking us places. But he was super fun guy, super fun dad. That comes into play when I have children. So I'm gonna have you hold on to that in terms of expectations. And my mom was just the amazing like homemaker, carer. She later on went to work, but just this model of like serving and really pouring into the family. I didn't realize until later in my life how much my parents lived paycheck to paycheck. I literally thought we had everything. And in college, I remember kids were talking about, their favorite toys as kids. I'm like, I never had an Easy Bake Oven. I never had that. And what I realized is they didn't have the money to give us those things, but what they gave us, we felt like we were royalty. So I had all of that. And so from a really early age, I was like, I want this. I want to be married and I want to have kids and it's going to be awesome, because I didn't know any different. And then I also wanted to marry someone just like my dad. He needed to be tall. He needed to be dark. My dad's African American, so that was like, I'm just going to marry someone like my dad. And like handsome, and then maybe like a little bit wealthier than like my family was, because those were like important to me. Like major for some reason. But I really, really longed to kind of be married, and I definitely built these expectations of what that was going to look like, how that was going to be. And that definitely played on. Didn't eat much in high school. I went to the University of New Hampshire to study OT. And while I was in college, I met this guy. I won't say his name just in case he finds this on the internet, because you know he is. And I thought like he was the guy. I mean, he fit the profile to a T. He loved Jesus. He was tall. He was dark. Good looking, and he was in school to be a doctor. So I was like, that wealthy part, like it's good, it's gonna be there. And so I had all those things. And for a variety of different reasons, that relationship didn't work out. And it was interesting because my dad also, when things were kind of happening, he's like, I really just don't see him for you. He's like, I see all of these things that you're looking for, but my dad was looking right at his character and in his heart, and he was like, I don't think he's gonna treat you or my grandbabies as well as you deserve. Great guy, but my dad just kind of like knew me and kind of knew that situation. In the fall of '99, I began my clinical rotation in a locked psychiatric unit. Now, I love sharing this story about where Dave and I met, because I like to see what people's reactions are when I say that Dave and I met on a locked psychiatric unit. And they're like, some people are just quiet, like, oh, okay. And some people are like, oh, were you doing like one of your clinicals, like trying to make sure that was like the reason. But it was in the fall of '99. It was a super scary, dark place. Like locked psych units back then, before there was more gentler approach to people who've experienced really hard things. It was the restraints, it was screaming, it was a scary place. Totally, you could just feel that God's presence wasn't there, And there was this guy, working there. I'm assuming you figured out it was probably Dave, who totally did not fit my criteria. Anyone who knows Dave. So again, the criteria: tall, dark, rich, and Dave is shorter, white, and was working as a nurse's aide as he was trying to get on the Cambridge Fire Department. And so right then I was like, nope, lockdown. But time and being around someone kind of changes things. And so here's this guy who was showing this level of compassion and care about me that I've never experienced besides what I had received from my dad. In safety, he always knew where I was on the unit. Now, he would tell you that he's like, you walked off the elevator, and I was like, who's that girl? And I was like, didn't see him for like 2 weeks, But he just drawn to me and to protect me. He knew I was really scared being on that unit, and there were some scary people. There was lots of different incidences where he really like saved my life. Because it was Cambridge, and it was an internship, I had to park way over in a part of like Central Square, which is not a great place, and he would offer to drive me, no strings attached, no alternative like motive to be all like whatever. He just wanted to look out for my safety, and I was like, man, this guy is like chivalrous. And I'm like, but he doesn't kind of meet my expectations, like all of that. And so just time after time, like we just kind of built this friendship, and we obviously went on to get married. The first time that he met my parents, I remember going up to my dad, and I was totally expecting my dad to be like, nah, and within 5 minutes, it's like, I like this guy. And I was like, Dad, why, why? And he's like, he might not be what you want on like the outside. He's like, but he is the guy who is he is a guy of character. He is hardworking, and he's gonna treat you and my grandbabies really well. I was like, whoa, grandbabies, like let's like wait a minute. But he could see that even though Dave was very rough around the edges, he could see a part of his character that was going to be in our relationship for the long haul. Because Dave wears his emotions on his sleeve. If anyone who knows him, it's like he is not Mr. like softy guy, but he's genuine and he's sincere, and he like when he has your back, he has your back, he has your back. And my dad knew that was going to be someone who needed to marry his daughter. A little bit about Dave's family. And this comes into, again, expectations and stuff, is Dave came from a broken home. When he was 1, his father left. At 9, said that, was his last conversation with his dad, and said he was never wanted. And so Dave had that. He did have an amazing guy step into his life when he was slightly older, who we know as Papa, who is his stepfather, who is awesome. There was lots of this brokenness. And so he had a super strong mom who kind of just is absolutely amazing, best mother-in-law in the world, but just kind of did everything and didn't necessarily bring Dave into what it was like to kind of communicate and make decisions. And that, again, in our marriage kind of came up as a challenge. So fast forward, even after we split up for 10 months in September 2004, Dave and I got married, and we had fun. Like, we went on an awesome honeymoon, and it was great. All seemed pretty normal in our relationships, the usual bumps along the way. And then we tried to have children. And I was told at 18 that I was never going to have children because of my endometriosis. So I was like, all right, 1.5 years, let's get going. We got to try this because I'm not going to have kids. And he's like, okay, like, and I had told him when we were dating, like, I might not be able to have kids. And he's like, okay. Like, he just would be like, okay, like, whatever, and he just had this attitude of like, everything's going to be fine. If we have kids, we have kids, whatever. So after kind of 1.5 years,
how old were you when you got married?
I was 27, and he's 6 years older than me.
Okay.
And so we got pregnant after trying fertility, and then we just gave that a break because it was super stressful. He's like, I can't come home and it was just too much for him to kind of feel pressure. He's a very intimate guy who's like, this is a relationship. I don't want this to like transactional piece, So we took a break, and I got pregnant. And in the late winter, early spring, in April of 2006, I found out I was pregnant with who we now know as Angel Baby. And Mother's Day weekend of that same year, Angel Baby's heart stopped beating, and it crushed me. And it was hard for Dave, but this was also a place where it was like this first, like, he didn't know how to kind of handle that because it wasn't something he was feeling. He's like, oh, we'll just kind of try again, and I stuffed some of that kind of down. And then we tried again, and in July of 2006 I became pregnant again, but I was a complete hot mess because I was totally afraid that something was going to happen. I worked in the neonatal intensive care unit where I was seeing babies kind of pass away all the time or have really, just traumatic. But in March of 2007, the first day of spring, which is new life, we had Owen. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the first day of spring was his birthday. And so, am I going too long? Am I going? Okay. And so this is when things kind of start to become interesting. And so, should I pause?
Maybe. I need to go soon, but
Yeah, should we pause and have someone
yes.
take over
Yes.
filming? I'm not gonna